Today is January 28th, 2025. It's 3 p.m. This is a City of Prescott City Council voting meeting. I think we can call this meeting to order, and then we'll go into introductions and announcements. And I also want to take a couple of minutes for a moment of silence because our previous esteemed Mayor, Rollie Simmons, who served this city for 3 terms, passed away early today. So I'd like to recognize and acknowledge Rollie's contribution to our city and ask for a moment of silence in recognition of his service to our city. Thank you very much. Mayor Pro Tem, do we have any announcements or introductions?
We sure do. We have some announcements. So let's see. The City of Prescott Workforce Housing Committee, they will host a community town hall meeting this Thursday, January 30th at 5:30 p.m. right here in the council chambers or virtually online. Updates about the progress of the Workforce Housing Committee will be shared. The committee also hopes to hear from citizens, businesses, and other stakeholders regarding housing availability and affordability in Prescott. Please RSVP at participateprescott.com. The next announcement is the Prescott Public Works Department is conducting night work at State Route 89 between Willow Lake Roundabout and the Phippen Roundabout from January 27th to the 31st from 8 to 5 a.m. for testing and preparation for the underground utility improvements in that area. This work is an initial phase of the planned underground utility improvements on SR 89. We appreciate your help and understanding as survey crews gather data to assist in the project design. For any questions and project information, call the project hotline at 928-237-3114 or visit www.sr89improvements.com. And that's it.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. We'll now have an invocation from Pastor Scott Savage with the Prescott Cornerstone Church, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance conducted by Councilwoman Furworth.
Let us pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you so much for the opportunity to begin this meeting, drawing our attention to you. You tell us in your word in 2 Chronicles that your eyes range to and fro, looking for those whose hearts are committed to you, that you might strengthen them. So I pray that you might strengthen our leaders as they look to serve well and to serve and hold their roles humbly. We pray that you'd guide them with wisdom and discernment as they make decisions for the future of our city. And we pray that you would continue to help our city to flourish in the days to come. We pray for the family of Mayor Simmons as they grieve the loss of their father, husband, and friend. And we pray that you'd comfort them in their grief. We offer this time to you, and we give you glory for the work you've done in our lives. In your name we pray. Amen.
Please join me in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, roll call, please.
Mayor Good?
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Cantelmi?
Here.
Councilwoman Furworth?
Here.
Councilman Gambogi?
I am here.
Councilman Montoya?
I am still here.
Councilman Moore?
Here.
And Councilmember Rusing?
Here.
All are present.
All right, we'll now have a presentation from Public Works staff regarding the 2024 completed transportation projects.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Ian Mattingly, Transportation Manager with Public Works. First off, thanks for having us here today. Just a brief presentation on some of the things that we've been doing, specifically in association and with the direction of, on a lot of these, your PB-TAC, your Pedestrian Bicycle Traffic Advisory Committee. So we just wanted to share these with you. So they're broken down into about 5 categories, and so we'll just go by category. The first group of projects that we've been doing or have completed is traffic calming related. Each one of these groups is going to kind of have a slide like this, which would just overview what the goals of what we're trying to accomplish with like traffic calming things, and then we'll have some photos of the projects themselves. But so traffic calming projects, we're trying to slow speeds through enhanced signing, striping, markings, and in some cases vertical measures. We have been of late doing a lot of visually narrowing the roadway, trying to better channelize vehicles and put them in the right place on the roadway. We retain parking in critical areas when alternative locations are not available, and we always are looking to add pedestrian crossings and other improvements to make multimodal things safer. So the first one we did was the Rosser Street traffic calming. This is the middle section of Rosser, and a lot of these hopefully you've seen, you're just driving around town, but this goes from on the west, Campbell over by the school, and then on the east side it's at Laurel Lane and Eagle Ridge, which is just before you get into the Meadows subdivision there. And this area has been, it's quite wide, had a double yellow center line, and it just hadn't been treated. So we approached it from a traffic calming perspective, went through PBTAC, and we came up with a plan to basically designate areas for parking and then bike facilities, which helped to narrow this really wide roadway. We also added a mid-block crossing, some slow and 25 symbols and some things like that. We already had some radar speed signs and things in this area, but it's been a good project. Robin Drive and Clearwater. Robin is behind the Crossings medical area off Willow Creek Road, and it connects over to Sandretto that comes out by Fry's. And so a lot of people use this area. It had speed humps that we put in when the subdivision was built, been in for a long time. But we did this kind of similar treatment. We visually narrowed it. We don't have room out there to do the bike lanes and such, but there's not sidewalk on one side, and people put their trash cans and things. So we did a lot of these same techniques to kind of finalize that whole area, and been well received by the residents there. Country Park Roadway. This is kind of on the other end of what we do. That one is 21 Curves off of Willow Creek Road. I'm sure all of you are familiar with that, but that area, no sidewalk, no facilities. We added edge lines. We've done some other improvements related to intersection control on that roadway, but trying to give visual cues for the shoulder drop-offs and things like that, and narrow it to try to promote some slower speeds. A lot of people in that area use that as not only to get to their homes, but also to go over to Williamson Valley, and we just wanted to slow the speeds down, narrow, and try to get some areas off the shoulder for pedestrians. And then Garden Street, we did speed humps. That Garden Street connects over from West Gurley, and you can go up by Prescott College there on Western. People use that as a cut through. We installed some speed humps in that area. We also we say that these are in the traffic control projects, so these would be things like multi-way stops, controlling signalization. We're trying to enhance safety by reducing collisions, by assigning right-of-way, minimizing conflicts. We want to reduce delay where possible. When you put a stop sign in, you can actually, and signals, obviously, you can improve operations through making it more efficient. Wherever possible, we accommodate bike and ped movements, and we just want to increase awareness of the users in the area. So North Mount Vernon and Moeller, this is over by the Public Works and the yards there where we have our central garage. That was done as a safety improvement. We have a lot of heavy trucks coming in there and people going over to the college. So that's a new 4-way stop. Obviously, you're all aware of the Prescott Lakes at Sundog Ranch Road. Signal and intersection improvements. It's really a high-profile one that you guys, approved and got built. Hidden Away is a 4-way stop on Trail Walk and Brookside. This is in the Prescott Lakes area. It resolved some issues that neighborhood was having regarding site visibility, and we were able to treat it with a multi-way stop or a four-way stop. And then on the Robin Drive one, that traffic calming project included a new multi-way stop on Clearwater Drive at Robin, which helped slow speeds and kind of control things in this area. And then in the medical center on Crossings Drive, we actually added the multi-way stop in the medical center. And that helps with traffic going on there. And then as you turn down to the left there, you go into the Robin Drive. So those were all completed. Bike facility improvement projects. So whenever possible, we do a lot of obviously pavement rehab work and things like that. So when we're looking at major streets like Willow Creek, Miller Valley, Iron Springs, we will review the existing striping because it gives us an opportunity to have that all overlaid and the old striping taken away, and then we can ensure that we have standards that meet, the current requirements, and that we're doing everything we can to make them as good as possible. So we want to increase safety for cyclists, provide connectivity if it didn't exist before, encourage cycling, and reduce traffic congestion. So on Willow Creek Road, we had this large maintenance project on Willow Creek this last season. It went all the way from Green and Pulliam down to 4 Points. And so while it's not noticeable maybe to the public and maybe even to some of us, we did add additional width in some of the bike lanes. And then we did, like this is the emergency pullout at YRMC. We do things like improve the skip hashing across the bike lanes, and that's done all the way down the corridor. So we can take those opportunities to do that, and it really came out nice. We have a lot more visibility for the bike lanes, and we don't take anything away from the vehicular operations, but we can meet all those goals. And then Rosser Street's on here again because, as I mentioned, even though we drove it as a traffic calming feature and we used bike lanes kind of as a tool to narrow the roadways, we also filled this gap that we had. So we have bike lanes all the way from 89 to the Meadows subdivision, and then they stopped right there where there's the median with the flagpole. And then we didn't have anything all the way over to Campbell. And then once you get to Campbell, that's kind of a narrow section that's a little special. But this allowed us to extend our bike network about a half a mile to a mile. I think it's 3/4 of a mile, somewhere in that range. Add additional bike lanes and facilities all the way down there. Kind of a side benefit of that project. Speed limit changes. You guys are aware of these, but whenever possible, we want to review our speed limits so that we can make sure that we have speeds that are appropriate for the roadways, the geometrics, and the development that exists. That we can reduce or eliminate enforcement when it's not needed in an area. It's very important. And we want to reduce our traffic calming requests for mitigation. And then just generally put people at a speed that they will all go. And so if you can stop speed differential or reduce it, you can make safer streets. A lot of the justification for these really came out of the citywide traffic study. And the first one is Williamson Valley Road. You guys voted on this. You voted to implement these, and they were done. Williamson Valley took a little bit of time to implement it, but that one, we not only raised the speed limit from 35 near the curve at Yakashpa on Williamson Valley Road, but we also coordinated with the county so that they would make a speed increase as well. So this is where you hit the new 40, and then the 40 goes all the way out to Southview, where the county then kicks it up to 45. We also tightened some of our speed zones down by Abaya Judd, tighten things up so that we can get out of the 25 quicker. And we do that so that if you let people go an appropriate speed in the appropriate area, then they have a tendency to then obey the lower speeds when you come into areas where you really need to use it. Before, I think we kicked them down to a 25 just around the curve from Yakashpa, and it's 5 lanes wide. Most people were not adhering to that. So that was a really good implementation from some direction you guys gave us.
Ian, when you're coming from Williamson Valley towards Iron Springs,
Yes.
and you're passing the Abaya Judd area, there's 2 25-mile-an-hour signs The first one is pretty visible. The second one is frequently behind a tree, so it's blocked. So I think either the tree needs to be trimmed or something be done to make sure that when they reach that crosswalk area, they realize they got to be down to 25. But right now it's, of course, it's the winter and it's not a evergreen, so it works okay. But when spring and summer rolls around, you can't see that sign.
No, we'll get that taken care of. No problem. And then Hassayampa Village Lane went along with the city. The citywide traffic study recommended that raise from 25 to 30 along that whole corridor, and that was implemented. That's been a good change. We've done speed studies since and found that the speed limit overall went up 1 mile an hour on the 85th percentile from what we had when it was posted 25. That is pretty much justification or confirmation that people were driving according to the roadway and the geometrics and not the speed limits, because they're holding pretty close to where they were before. But we did get that all installed and put in. And then we have intersection safety projects. These are enhancements. These are enhancements to existing intersections and locations. We do this to reduce conflicts, encourage safe driving behavior, increase visibility and communication at complex places where a lot's going on, and then again, safety of pedestrians and cyclists, and that translates to less crashes for vehicles. The roundabouts, the LED lights at our roundabout, we installed one this last year at, that's Prescott Lakes Parkway at the Justice Center. That's the second one. In 23, we put the first one in on 89 at Willow Lake. These help, for one, to identify the roundabout as you come into it, but also to encourage those who are on the main line to yield to the circulating traffic. Some of the locations, not this one in particular, but 89 and Willow Lake, a lot of people tend to get nervous when they come off the side street for that charging, the traffic that's charging into the intersection. And so this helps do that. This also just, in this location, you're coming downhill in a dark area. We do have a beacon, but it does just show you the intersection. We had some crashes where they were just driving right over the island. So we're hoping, and it looks like these are helping with some of that identification. And then 4 points pedestrian safety flags. I think you've probably seen people out there or seen them at least on the corners. The city worked with YRMC as part of the safety improvements for their remote parking lot, and they have a lot of employees moving back and forth. So we work to, METCD says that there's no real regulations regarding this. It's an enhancement of existing things. You're still supposed to push the button, but we added signing, talking about how you use the flags to just additionally help yourself be noticed in this very busy intersection where people are trying to make lefts and they're not always looking for pedestrians. We have had crashes here where left turning cars tend to hit pedestrians in this intersection, and we've done a lot, but this is just the latest thing that we've done, and people are using it, and we've seen the flags are transferring around the corner from morning shift to evening shift, so it's been a positive. Mount Vernon and Carlton, Mount Vernon has got a lot of attention through the years, but this intersection, people seem to roll through this stop sign quite a bit, and we have some local people who watch it for us and report that to PD and us. And so we've added the stop pavement legends this last year, and we also added those solar powered beacons on top of the stop signs. You can see that in the day and the night. And there's a lot of warnings coming in here, but positive reception from the residents. It seems to be a good treatment. We've got some other ones, some yellow amber beacons and some things we're going to be trying this fiscal year. And then 89 at Rosser, we installed in our long-term trialing the flashing left arrow yield. These can help to encourage people to really yield. Obviously, on a green ball, you have to yield in a left condition. But we installed it here, and we want to install that maybe near Embry Riddle. These are good on high-speed locations where we've had some crash problems, but that's been a very positive. And our last section, striping and parking improvements. This is where we maybe clarify or change the parking on a street, add additional striping, change some things up, all for safety purposes. Lee Boulevard, this is another location where we did some pavement maintenance, and so all the striping got covered over and gave us a fresh canvas to do some things. We had the hashing there by the fire station, but it was really difficult to understand that you had to turn right onto Yapa Hills Drive. And then we had the new clinic open just below Discount Tire. So we needed to make sure they had a left turn pocket in. So we developed some new striping, put it in, and then we have some skip hashing there by that silver car that forces you so that both lanes don't go up the hill to Touchmark. And that was positively received. Seems to be doing pretty good. It also allowed us up past Discount for us to put an edge line in where people can walk. People walk down from Touchmark. There's no sidewalk, but they're using the shoulder, and we continued that down towards Discount where there is sidewalk. So then they can get on this sidewalk here. Taylor Hicks, we worked to move shift this line over and create a loading zone for parents during drop-off. That was very positive. The school district appreciated that. North Pleasant angled parking, we added that to do some clarifications and get people to not park illegally. South Cortez Street, same thing. That's down by the National Forest, the Forest Service office. And I think that is a portion of it was. This is South Cortez. Yeah, this is that's South Pleasant. Yeah. So, yeah, Mayor, we still have South Pleasant currently in the works. Yeah. North Pleasant. So to clarify, this is, you can't see it, but just to our left on that photo is Washington School. So that's north of Gurley. This is North Pleasant. Yeah, we're still working on South Pleasant. We've got a lot of things that we'll show you next time, but yeah, we're still working on South Pleasant. Yes, it is in the works. Sorry for the confusion. That's all I had. If you had any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Councilmember Rusing.
Thank you, Ian. You may remember I used to be the council liaison for the PB-TAC committee, and I just wanted to let you know, thank you. I'm a big fan for those solar-powered blinking lights on the stop signs and the pedestrian crossings. One of the projects that was an intergovernmental project was working with the county and getting that crosswalk improved from the courthouse, for the courthouse employees, over to Union Street. And getting the flashing lights there, the solar-powered. And so thank you. I think that's really enhanced that crossing as far as safety. One of my questions is, we have a striping annually. We go around and try to do all the pedestrian crosswalks and striping, parking. Things are looking pretty faded. Do you know when that's going to start and what the plan is for that?
Yeah, so we call it the spring season, but it typically does begin in late February, early March. So we have snow like we do today during this time and the temperatures aren't suitable for putting down striping and things. So we have to wait through these periods. Okay. And unfortunately, it does start to fade and things. We also haven't had rain in a long time. So even before we had this weather, you don't get any washing effect of some of the rain and the cars churning on the line. So a lot of them are looking pretty dusty and dim. Yeah. But we do have that, and we'll do that as soon as possible.
Yeah. And then another thing that the committee did was look at the pedestrian bike traffic report accidents. Mm-hmm. So I was going to ask you how 2024 turned out as far as bike and pedestrian accidents. I don't believe there were any deaths this year.
So we typically provide PB-TAC with a summary of the year's collisions, and we do that around March. So we're still compiling some of that, but we do watch the collisions come through as they go. And there hasn't been anything that's really standing out. Luckily, we're not seeing any kind of trend up or something, but I can't give you the numbers yet. We're still analyzing that.
Okay. Yep. All righty. Thank you. That's all.
Thank you.
Councilman Moore.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a suggestion, Ian, and thank you for all the work you've done. It's been great. The intersection at Rosser, Laurel, and Eagle Ridge.
Yes.
A lot of times cars going eastbound come up over that rise and there's the stop sign there and they tend to roll right through that. That might be another good spot to put some of those flashing lights like you did at Mount Vernon. And I think maybe put some flashing lights before the rise to warn them that there's a stop coming up, and then have the flashing lights at the intersection. I personally have had several close encounters at that intersection with people that go right through the stop signs there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilwoman Furworth.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Ian, for the update. Would love to get a copy of this sent to us. The other thing is, thank you for the work that didn't make it yet onto 2024, but I know it'll make it onto 2025. You already began the work with Westridge, and I've already heard just the same kind of thing. The psychological nature of narrowing the road slows people down, and the neighbors have already noticed that, and you haven't even finished the rest of the project. So I have noticed it and heard about it from the neighbors, and so I appreciate that. The one question I did get on Rosser from some folks is, why does the bicycle lane at some point cross from one side of the street to the other side of the street? People thought that was a little unusual and maybe a little dangerous.
Sure. So we do transition from a bike lane to a shared use lane. So we don't eliminate the bike facility, but there are locations where we have the bike lane, for instance, on the north side, and then we go for a while, and then it transitions into a shared use. The reason we do that is the housing and the direct fronting properties they alternate back and forth on the street. And in some areas, we don't have enough room to provide a dedicated bike lane on both sides, plus some type of parking. And so it's my thinking, and the PB-TAC agrees, that in those locations, we like to have the parking directly in front of the homes where their driveways are. We don't want them crossing across. So that's why. You have a bike lane, and we can fit, like as you come off that four-way stop, we can fit a bike lane and a parking aisle so the bike lane is there. Once we get up the hill and we start to go down, we can't do that anymore. And all the homes are on the south side as you get over towards Campbell. And so we provide them a parking aisle. So that's why it's moving. And yeah, it seems kind of arbitrary. You look at it and you go like, why were you inconsistent? But that's what we're trying to do. Keep people's parking where they need it in front of their homes. And we put a sharrow there, for instance, and then bike lane on the other side. And it does shift back and forth.
There's been no concerns from any of the bicyclists that use that?
I think we've heard from one bicyclist regarding any comment regarding it. I think we've got 3 total comments.
Okay.
One was regarding trash. The lanes are a little closer to where they put their trash before, and so they don't. They're trying to work that out. How's that going to work? Another lost some of the width that he had on his side, and he loads an RV there, so now he has to put it on the other side to load. And then I think one bike person didn't like that we did that sort of thing.
It probably was the same person that spoke to me.
It could be.
Thank you.
And I mean, they're all useful comments. Mm-hmm.
All right, any other comments or concerns? Thank you, Ian.
Thanks. Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to the open call to the public.
Thank you, Mayor. The City of Prescott welcomes public engagement, and residents may comment and address the council regarding matters that are not included on the posted agenda during the call to the public. If you wish to speak, please complete a green speaker card and submit it to me prior to the meeting being convened. As a reminder, speakers are limited to 4 minutes, and the call to the public will be limited to 40 minutes in total, with the following stipulations. Citizens will be limited to addressing the council on the same topic only 4 times. If a topic has been addressed more than 5 times by different speakers, the mayor may limit future discussion on this topic, and topics of a primarily national concern may be limited at the discretion of the mayor. I do have one open call card today, and it is from Ralph Hess.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. I'm Ralph Hess. I live in Prescott for the last 34 years. I have a petition for you today in accordance with Article 2, Section 18 of the Prescott City Charter.
Are you going to address the council, Ralph, or are you just handing that out?
Just submitting it.
Okay. That's all, Mayor.
Consent agenda. I've asked to have item 8L pulled. And also something that came up to my attention this morning, I'd like to make a comment on 8F. Councilmember Rusing?
Yes, and I'd also like to pull item H8H as in hotel for discussion, please.
So that's
eight-
F, H, and L pulled?
8H and L? H, F, H, and L.
3.
All right, so we will discuss 8F, H, L, and yeah, so those three. All right, I'll entertain a motion on the remaining items.
Mayor, I move to approve consent agenda items A through E, G, I through K.
Second.
That's it.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Please vote.
Passes 7-0.
Okay, we'll go to item H8F first. Now, I know this is for the purchase and implementation of additional bollards in some of the roads right around the courthouse plaza.
Yes, sir.
One of the things that came to my attention was the condition in New Orleans where this terrorist drove on the sidewalk to get around the barriers and then was able to have that horrible event where a number of people were killed. And they utilized the access on the sidewalk to be able to make it onto that street. So these bollards will block off street surface access, but not necessarily the sidewalks. So I talked to one of the county supervisors, and they're going to entertain looking at maybe putting a bollard on the courthouse plaza sidewalk, which is their responsibility. But I'd like to have us look into maybe putting a bollard on the sidewalk in front of Whiskey Row and Cortez and Goodwin and Gurley too, so we would have that extra protection. So I know it's not proposed here, but it's part of might be included in the bollard project for a future consideration.
We do have multiple phases for this, Mayor, and that's something we can definitely look at the locations where we can do that.
Councilmember Rusing?
Thank you. I agree. Mayor Good makes a good point. You can see what happened online. I've seen the video. It was a side street. There was a police car parked horizontally, completely blocking the street, and the assailant just went right around the end of the police car, and continued down the side street. One of the purposes of having the bollards on the street, I agree, is to free up our public works vehicles. We don't need to park garbage trucks down there. We don't need to have fire trucks down there and other utility vehicles, so that they can continue doing their work. And it'll be a lot easier to put up a bollard than to bring several huge trucks down there to block off the street. So I think that's a good idea. Maybe look at enhancing this. Unfortunately, in this day and age, we have to have this conversation. Thank you.
Ian, do you have a comment?
Yeah. So I just wanted to respond to that. And obviously what Tim is saying is right. This current contract is for the ones that are in the street. But following that event, we were, discussing these things in Public Works. And we are also trying to resolve how we're going to be storing bollards going forward. Currently, we use trailers and we drive them from a location and we put them in. But we're moving more towards on-street storage, using racks or other systems. And we had discussed strategically placing bollards as you come across a street with the bollard installations, adding a location within a sidewalk so that when you need to close off that leg, obviously there's lots of locations and we only use them when we have the need at that special event, but then we would add an additional location in future projects to have them in the sidewalks where you can still have ADA compliance, but between buildings, the bollard in the sidewalk and the ones in the street, there would be no ability for vehicles to incur up on the sidewalk and go around. So that's kind of the thinking that we're moving down. And that can also be enhanced by the fact that when we store the bollards, we're looking at locations very close to the bollard installation points and using like handrails so that they don't trip on the bases where we set the bases when they're not being used. So there'd be a handrail assembly or something like that, which would also become a physical barrier for cars to incur. So I just wanted to give a little more info. That's what we're kind of thinking and moving towards. We haven't done it with this one, but that's the idea. So, thank you.
Thanks, Tim, and thanks, Ian. Councilmember Roosing, you want to talk about 8H?
8H.
You need
yes.
to vote on F first.
Oh, okay.
I move to approve item 8F.
Second.
All in favor, please vote.
Passes 7-0.
Okay, now we'll go to 8H.
Thank you. This is going to be a very large arterial road here, Jenna Lane, and I had a lot of questions. I couldn't tell from the plat map exactly what was going on, so please bear with me. It says there's no fiscal impact associated with this item. So as I understand it, Depot Ranch is going to grant us this easement, and then they're going to build the road, and then we assume it after 2 years, or do we build the road once we get the easement granted?
Yeah, good question. So Councilperson Roosing, Mayor Pro Tem, rest of the council, Randy Parham, City Engineer, and Deputy Public Works Director. But yeah, you're absolutely right. This will just be a dedication of the right-of-way and easements and tracks at this point, and then at a later date, they'll receive their approval on their permits, which are currently in review. I believe they're very close to being approved to come back and construct the road and some other utilities in the right-of-way section.
Okay, and then we assume it after 2 years when it's obviously there's no defects that they need to fix in that 2-year warranty period.
Correct.
I have a hard time from the plat seeing if I see there's an easement for utilities, wet and dry utilities, but I don't see an easement. I mean, I see easements for stormwater. I don't see an easement for a sidewalk or a multimodal path for bikes, joggers, dog walkers, because there's going to be, I assume, residences and developments along this. Is it just something I'm missing from the plat?
No, it's a great question. And I actually was, my first review of this plat, or it's actually just a map of dedication, I called a meeting with Scott Lyon, who prepared this document, because I had the same question. Because it doesn't look like our typical section. These are district roads that were contemplated in the development agreement between Deepwell Ranch and the city. So these are in conformance with the master plan that is part of that development agreement. But the multi-use paths will be included, but they will actually be in a tract and not in the actual right-of-way.
So they'll be outside the right-of-way.
Correct.
And they'll be like, will it be like a hard surface, like a pavement?
Yeah,
I've
the
seen
current plans
asphalt.
under review show an 8-foot multi-use path.
Okay, well, thank you. I'm excited to hear about that. I think it'll really enhance connectivity between what goes on further north at the end of this Jenna Lane. Is there going to be a median on this road? Because the road, from what I could tell, this is going to be a 60-foot wide road approximately.
Yeah. So in the interim, it'll be a 3-lane, 1 lane in each direction with a middle turn lane. And then the ultimate build out of Jenna Lane will be 5 lanes, 2 lanes of both directions with a middle turn lane.
Okay.
So no median.
So when do you think that final phase is going to happen? And is the city of Prescott going to be responsible for that upsizing?
No, there are certain trigger points as they progress and develop north where it would trigger the full build out of Jenna Lane.
Okay. All righty. Well, it sounds like everyone's done their homework, and thank you very much.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Hey, do you want to make a motion, Councilmember Rusing?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion that we move to approve FNP 24-001.
Second.
We have a motion and second. Please vote.
Passes 7-0.
Okay, we'll move on to item 8I. Oh, we didn't.
L is in Lake.
Move to 8L. Mayor Pro Tem? Okay. Well, I reviewed 8L very extensively. This is a proposal from an aggregator, so it's not an individual contract. I think within the aggregator, we're looking at contracts with Ingram Micro, ProMark, Arctic Wolf, Cradle Point Ericsson, GN Netcom, Lenovo, American Power Conversion, Rubric, and then the primary contract would be with Nutanix. Now, I looked at some of the material from these individual groups, and I understand what your intention here is to bundle all this together so that you would have capability in all these different areas of IT. Am I correct on that?
No, and that's actually not true. And it's not true just because the way that contract vehicle is, right? Like most contracts, it's like with Acme Inc. to buy widgets, and then you'd have a different contract. This one's kind of weird because it is a bundle of companies that do a bunch of different things. We are picking one of those companies to do a specific thing, not the rest of those companies to do anything at this time, if that makes sense.
So why were they included in the packet?
It's just the way that contract is written. It's unusual that you have a bundle of companies. The state of Arizona contract has a lot of that where, I don't know, say you're buying printers. There might be 50 companies on it, but I might buy
you have access to by
one company.
By agreeing to that contract.
Yeah, but it doesn't necessarily mean you exercise that. It's just that you get the breadth of those companies, but in this case, it is a single company of a specific product, not all of those companies and all the things they do is not what our intention or our interest is at this time.
So which company is it?
The company of record is Server Monkey, and the product is from a company called Nutanix, which is an American company.
It's mechanic?
Nutanix.
Nutanix.
Yeah. Nutanix.
Nutanix.
Yep.
So we're not going to be doing we're not going to be doing business with Ingram Micro
No. Or Arctic Wolf or
ProMark.
No.
Well, those were my primary concerns because looking at the detail on those other reference companies, there's so much commitment to DEI. And I think as we've seen from our federal government, reviewing and removing any federal contracts with DEI-related companies, and any administrators within the federal government have been removed from those positions. I want to make sure that we don't contract with a company that is so committed to that. So if Nutrinix or whatever they are, they'll provide all of those different components that you're so concerned about, that right now we're looking at, I guess we're using multiple companies to do that, right?
We are, and Nutanix would be considered a best of breed for what they do. There's 20-some thousand companies in the world that use them, including our federal government, companies like Hershey. So large companies use them, small companies use them. It hurts me to say it, but ASU uses them down in Tempe. Physically pains me to say that. The confusion on the contract
Well,
and the
I'm not a
memo is
big
on
fan
me.
of ASU, I'll tell you that.
That's the way to be. So that's on me for the write-up in the memo.
U of A,
Yeah, that's what we're-
Wildcats.
right? So the confusion is that the contract vehicle is broad. What we're actually buying is, like, if we went down to Gallup and Ford and we're just buying one car, not all the cars on the lot. Even though it's cool they have trucks and they have this and that, we just want one car to do one thing, and that's all we're interested in.
I have a comment.
Councilmember Rusing, you had a comment?
Thank you. I see you have included Schneider Electric in this. Are they actually, what is their role going to be?
They have no role. I mean, we know of Snyder. We know what they sell. The city uses some of their things
Right.
across multiple departments. In this case, it's interesting down the contract, but we have no involvement with Schneider or what they're selling because we don't need it.
Okay. All righty. Thank you.
Yep.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Hey, Nate, I saw that packet myself and went through all of that, but I had one question, and I did look through the contract. Are we allowing all of those other companies like ProMark and some of the other, if we sign an agreement with Nutanix, are we allowing the rest of those companies to have access to anything of ours?
Absolutely not.
In the loop?
No.
Okay.
Zero
Yeah, 'cause
access.
I was reading one of them that was a supplier to communist China, and I'm like, wait a minute, are we going to be part of that? But
No.
okay, thank you.
Yep.
Councilwoman Furworth?
Thank you, Mayor. Nate, I think there's just, I was trying, when I was reading this, I was like, are we dealing with Survey Monkey or Server Monkey? And on one page of the cooperative agreement, it has both companies' names.
Super confusing. It's Server Monkey. Now, this morning I was looking at some of the DEI information, and I was reading through, and I was like, this doesn't make any sense. I was on Survey Monkey, not Server Monkey. So horrible names across the board for some of these companies.
So just on the first page of the cooperative agreement, it says between the city of Prescott and Server Monkey.
Yep.
And then down below, the mailing address says Survey Monkey. So just be sure to get that corrected before we move on. Because
Will do.
I read enough to know it was Server Monkey that we were doing business with. Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, I noticed that too on our proposed contract. It did say Survey Monkey. So I don't think it passed spell check, did it?
Well, they're both words according to spell check.
All right, then that solves my concerns.
Mayor, I move to approve item 8L.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second for 8L. Please vote.
Passes 601.
Okay, we'll move on to our regular agenda, item 9A.
WSA 24-052, approval of water service application submitted by Icon Point 5 Architects on behalf of owner Embry Riddle Aeronautical University, location APN 106-03-004, comprising 240 acres, requesting 11.33 acre feet per year.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. I'm Brian Reese, the Water Resource Environmental Service Manager for the city in the Department of Public Works. So the item in front of you today is a water service application for a new student union building. This building will be a multi-use building. They are requesting 11.33 acre feet of water. So the proposed building is located on the campus of Embry Riddle University, off of Willow Creek, shown in the general vicinity of the red box on the map in front of you. So this exhibit shows the approximate location of the new building, which will replace 5 existing buildings on the campus. Per the amended 2022 water policy, a water service application was submitted by the applicant for the project so that we could understand and estimate the water use. The applicant's civil engineer, Dibble Engineering, did do a demand analysis for this project. They utilized water pliers provided by the city through our general engineering standards. Their water analysis basically took the estimated demand use for the new building and subtracted it from the demand use from the 5 buildings that are going to be replaced. And that differential water use came out to approximately 9 acre feet per year of estimated demand for this new building. The landscape associated with the new building is estimated at about 1.55 acres, utilizing the low water use landscape planting water multiplier of 1.5. That comes out to approximately 1.5 acre feet per year. So added with the building use, that comes out to 11.33 acre feet a year, the estimated usage for this new project. So this application was heard by the Water Issues Subcommittee in the January 7th meeting. At that meeting, the Water Issues Subcommittee voted to move this forward and recommend approval of this project. So in summary, we have a new student union in front of you, replacing 5 old buildings. A total of 11.33 acre feet per year is the estimated total demand for this building. And yes, for your consideration. So if you have any other questions, I'd be happy to try to answer.
So is that a net new amount of water?
Correct. Net new amount of water.
Right. And they currently have a reasonably new student housing on that campus that you should have a pretty good accurate number of how much water is used in that building.
Yes, I mean, they came out with the demand analysis for that building also. We have a master meter that goes to all of Embry Riddle's buildings, so I don't have any exact values of any of the buildings within the campus. However, based on information provided by Embry Riddle to their civil consultant, they put together the demand analysis for this project and for the residential student halls, or residential buildings.
So we don't have any sub-metering for some of those higher water use buildings on the campus?
No, not that I'm aware of.
So how can we know if they have a broken water line or something like that that's losing a lot of water?
As for now, we would probably supply them with the same information we do with any other customer that we have about increase in water use and spikes in water use. I'm not sure if Embry Riddle themselves has any type of sub-metering on the buildings that they use to monitor it. I'd have to ask them that question.
Well, it seems like considering the growth and the size of the campus and the future growth that they're expecting, being able to monitor the water use within the overall campus should be important for them. Otherwise, it's just a giant number. And if it goes up a little bit, they wouldn't have any idea where it's happening.
That's true. And we've been talking to Embry Riddle and encouraging them to talk to the city about maybe doing a new water service agreement where we could get with them, look at their master planning for the next 5 to 10 years, because they have mentioned that most of their growth for the campus will be here at the Prescott facility. So we've talked about getting together with them so that they can go over their master planning. We could talk about making sure that we understand what their needs are going to be for water requests in the future, and we could talk about conservation efforts and other things that you just mentioned.
Well, I think if we do utilize the worm more effectively to be able to monitor actual use versus projected use, and then eventually I would like to see some penalties allowed and attached to that if we find out that a particular commercial facility is using water way above where they originally applied and were expected to use that. I know that there are some commercial facilities right now that gave numbers and then they realized that, boy, we don't have to put any extra cost in here. We'll just pay the bill.
Yeah.
Cost of doing business. But in essence, it reduces our water portfolio. So if we can put something like that into effect at Embry Riddle, then I think it would be in their best interest to know if there is a problem somewhere and how to fix it.
Yeah, definitely. And it's the benefit of having that tool, the water resource management model, is it gives us a snapshot of real-time usage at any given time, right. So we can check it and compare it against the values that we're approving with water service applications.
Absolutely. Councilmember Rusing?
Mayor Good brings up some good points that weren't discussed in the Water Issues Subcommittee meeting. And so, as I understand it, there's going to be one master meter for like the whole campus or just for this student union building?
No, I believe we have just one master meter for the entire campus.
And is it going to be a new smart meter that we've been installing all over town?
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Gwen Rowage, Public Works Director. Embry Riddle operates their system off of 2 master meters. They're in 2 separate locations. One's at the northeast corner of the campus, and the other is about midway on the west side of the campus. So there are 2 master meters, 2 6-inch master meters that feed that entire campus. So when they add new users, you're correct, Mayor, we wouldn't know if there was a leak on the campus or those sorts of things. But we would see it reflected in the usage going through the master meter. Their water bill would increase quite a bit. So, if it was a small leak, they may not notice it. If it was a bigger leak, then obviously you have physical indications that there's a leak as well as an increase in the water bill, along those lines. Yes, all of the meters in the city will be replaced to the new AMI system. Because those meters are quite a bit larger, those haven't been done in the first phase. Those will come in later phases of the project. Mm-hmm. Those meters are quite expensive.
Mm-hmm. Gwen, I have another question as far as sub-metering. Would it add a lot of cost to Embry Riddle if they did a sub-meter on each dorm? They're planning on 2 new dorm apartment complexes plus the student union. So if they added a sub-meter on each one of those buildings so that in case there was a leak, they could identify it a lot quicker?
So adding a sub-meter at the time of construction is relatively simple, but when you have to go in and retrofit it, that's when it can, doesn't always, but it can become more difficult to do. And as Brian mentioned, I've been in discussions with some of the leadership over at Embry Riddle, encouraging them to sit down and talk with us about a long-term water
plan for the campus because they have so many buildings on the campus. Some of them have been there for decades. And so I think they're kind of like the city within a city, and they've got really old stuff and they've got new stuff. And so we'd like to work with them and see how we can get them to a better place together, working with them. And obviously, master metering and water conservation are high on the list of topics we'd like to talk to them about, as well as what they see as their future water needs, because quite frankly, they have a lot of land there and a lot of potential for future development and growing their university, which is good for the city. But in order for us to plan for our future water supplies, we really need to be partners with them and be talking with them now about what they think those needs might be. And so they were open to those conversations. I'm just waiting for the callback so we can schedule a sit down and have those conversations.
So as I understand it, it's a lot more cost effective and beneficial to do the submetering at the time of construction rather than retrofitting. So it's probably too late for the apartment dorms, but can we somehow deliver the message to them that there should be a submeter on?
Well, the new
the student
code,
union?
the new code requires it in some instances. It does not. I'd have to look at the definition again, but I don't believe it would necessarily apply in this instance, but I think we could certainly encourage it. And they've been receptive to our requests, so.
Because it would be beneficial to themselves too, as far as conserving water and identifying a leak a lot sooner.
Especially with landscaping.
The
With
drip
the freeze
systems.
thaws we have here and things, and people don't winterize them correctly, and then, you turn it on in the spring and you got spraying water everywhere and leaks. I know it happens at my house. I'm sure it happens at other people, And so landscaping is probably the biggest abuser of water conservation, more so than, inside uses.
Okay. Alrighty, thank you. Is the applicant here?
I do not see the applicant here. Oh,
The applicant's back there.
Councilwoman Furworth, you want to ask your question now?
Well, this is great because I had heard on the radio this was going to be a really cool place to hang if you're a student. And the question was, the public's kind of excited about maybe some of the restaurants you're bringing into this new student union. So if you could tell us about that, that would be, I think, great tax news for all of us.
I don't know if I have all of the specs of what exactly we're going to be.
But first, lift the microphone.
I was trying to keep a secret. So overall, what we're doing is just really innovating the entire aspect of what right now is our union. It only has a couple of restaurants and a couple of options for our students to go to and to gather and to have community meetings, and just basically amplifying that to match a lot of what we're seeing in the other universities across the nation in a way that's, I'm going to be very honest with you, I do not have a list of the names of exactly what is going to be there.
The rumor was Chick-fil-A in Prescott.
I've heard that as well. I've heard that. I don't have the contract on me, so I don't want to go out and say something that. But that is.
Okay, I said it. You did it.
Okay. but yes, I think that's.
Councilmember Rusing.
Hi, I have a question. Is there going to be a new gymnasium and showering facilities in this student union?
No.
Okay, thank you.
I will.
Councilmember Montoya.
Thank you. Is there going to be a Chick-fil-A in this new student union? I'm serious. I heard there was. And I'm tired of spending my money in Prescott Valley. So if there is a Chick-fil-A, will Prescott residents be able to use it?
Yes.
Awesome.
Confidently, yes.
Will it have a drive-through?
I mean, it depends what you're driving, so I guess. You can get on a scooter.
Just had to ask.
We'll get to relive our youth hanging out in the student union, eating our Chick-fil-A.
We would love to have you all.
Did you have a question? Okay. Any other questions or comments? Thank you, Megan. Thank you, Brian. I'll entertain a motion on this.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve WSA 24-052.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Please vote.
Passes 7-0.
All right, we'll move on to item 9C.
Approval of City Contract Number 2023-210A6, an amendment to City Contract Number 2023-210 with Fann Contracting, Inc. for construction of the Eastwood Drive parking improvements.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Tim Sherwood, Capital Program Manager. Today, the item I have before you, the Penn Eastwood project was awarded by Council to Fann Contracting back in April of 22, and we completed the project in June of 24. Warranty letters went out on June 27th. At the City Council meeting on June 25th, two residents of 535 and 511 Eastwood.
Mr. Mayor, point of order. You said.
Yeah, we're at 9B.
9C, we're on 9B.
Okay. So two residents at 535 and 511 Eastwood spoke during the call to the public at that meeting. I'm not sure if any council members recall that. Expressing concerns over adverse impacts to their property due to the construction project. The roadway was widened and grades were raised, and the roadway was super elevated to trying to confine the drainage to the cut side of the road. So if you're looking at the map, the red line where the houses are numbered in red, the water is now going to the opposite side of the street from them. The cul-de-sacs you also see there also drain towards Eastwood Drive, and that also impacts drainage on that road in that corridor. Following the meeting, staff had several meetings with both of those residents at their homes to discuss their concerns and help develop. We met with the project engineer to develop site-specific plans for each home to try and alleviate their concerns and come up with a resolution. Two other residents during the course of this the interactions with the first two residents at 527 and 519 also came forward with similar concerns as plans were being developed for the first two properties. Plans were presented to the affected property owners for approval, and TCEs necessary for access. The work will be in the right-of-way, but we'll need to access their property in order to construct the improvements. To date, all the plans have been approved by the property owners, and the TCs have all been signed with the exception of 511 Eastwood. They were supposed to have a meeting with the engineer yesterday due to the weather stuff. They backed out of that, so it's going to happen this week. I think they just had a couple minor questions about the improvements on their property. The original contract for Penn Eastwood was for $10,947,000. The completed dollar amount for the project was $10,695,000, roughly. The remaining amount on the contract at the time when the contract was closed was $251,945.64. The contract for this contract amendment is for $348,614. So it's really a net amendment of $96,668 to complete the work. Public Works is recommending award of this contract amendment to Fann Contracting in the amount of $348,000 and $348,614. And with that, I would be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Councilmember Rusing.
Thank you. I was contacted by one of the homeowners and went out and looked at what happened, and her driveway was basically, as a result of the construction, inaccessible, unsafe, and unusable. I'm concerned that was this able to be prevented? Was somebody at fault? And can we get reimbursed by the contractor's construction insurance agency?
This is no fault of the contractor. The contractor built this project per the plans that were bid on. This is just it's a situation where these four houses being significantly below grade when the project started, with the widening of the road and the raising of the grades, they were adversely affected. The rest of the project, we didn't have anybody come to us and say you impacted my property in a way that we can't access it. This was just four unique properties in this location. Yeah, there's no fault to the contractor on this, in my opinion.
Well, it is true these lots the driveways were very steep to begin with. Mm-hmm. And so I just want to thank you for taking this into consideration and answering their problems and getting this fixed. Approximately how long do you think this project will take?
I looked at the construction schedule. I think we're looking to be done by April.
April. That's pretty speedy.
And trust me, we wanted to get this started sooner. It just took time to get each individual property a plan that they approved of, get pricing from the contractor, et cetera. With the holidays and the lack of council meetings, it's just today was the first day we could really get in front of council to get this awarded.
Okay. All righty. Thank you.
Councilwoman Furworth.
Thank you, Mayor. I had a question about my husband and I drove this yesterday, and we were both kind of concerned about the very last home in the row, 505. And so I could see why those neighbors complained, and it didn't look to me like I couldn't tell if 505 was even occupied. Have we engaged with that residence as well?
We have not heard anything from the resident at 505.
It looks like there's a bunch of stuff going on there. So that'd be my only, I'm absolutely prepared to vote for this, but I want to put the sensitivity out that there was one more house in the row that is similarly affected.
We'll go out and take a look at it.
Thank you.
Councilman Moore.
Thank you, Mayor. My comment's similar to Lois. I was just wondering if there was going to be any further possible residents coming forward and saying, hey, you've done this for my neighbors and now I want it done for me too. So that's just my concern.
Not that I'm aware of it this time, Councilman Moore.
Councilmember Rusing.
I'm sorry, I just forgot to turn off my button.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor. Hey, Tim, I was called also by the neighborhood, and I went over and looked at that myself, and I had a question, and I had asked them if they had access to the engineering. Was this just not on the engineering, on the grading and drainage plan when the project was done? How did this get overlooked?
No, it was on the plans. The grades were there, and then it just, like I said, as it got constructed, you try and cover everything you can in a set of construction plans. It just, one of those things is, as it was being constructed, it was obvious this was going to be an issue. And as soon as we had a chance to talk to the residents, we're trying to fix it.
Yeah, but was the grading and drainage plan that the engineer's stamp is on, was that followed, and did you compare the two?
Yes.
By shooting
one of the things I requested before I went out and talked to residents, I wanted pre-construction and post-construction conditions.
Yeah.
And so that's what I took out to talk to all the residents with. And there were some instances where the road was raised as much as 18 inches in front of those properties.
Yeah, I could see that before they even paved, and I was just curious why they didn't deal with that to begin with. That's all. I mean, they've raised the flag on this, going pretty far back, and I think that was should have been addressed before they actually went through with the paving. So that's my concern, is making sure that we followed the engineer's stamp plan and
we
didn't
did.
deviate, because I hate to go back and pay for this twice.
No.
If there was a deviation there.
No, we double checked all that to make sure that the as-built grades that were turned in were per the plans, and they are.
Okay, thank you.
Very well. Do we have any public comment on this?
We do not, Mayor.
No. All right, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I am moved to approve city contract number 2023-210A6.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Please vote.
Passes 7-0.
All right, now we'll move on to item 9C.
Adoption of ordinance number 2025-1881, an ordinance of the mayor and council of the city of Prescott, Yavapai County, Arizona, amending the city of Prescott's land development code, section 2.5.6, guest quarters, to allow for accessory dwelling units, ADUs, to be rented long-term, subject to requirements listed within Article 2.5.6, addition of definition for ADUs under LDC Table 11.2.5, and general terms.
Thank you, Sarah. Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, council members. Sarah, thanks. All my agenda memos are super long, the titles, so I appreciate your patience. And as I said, good afternoon. We are going over an item that was put forward by council at the November 5th meeting. You postponed it to a date certain to give staff the opportunity to look into some of the questions that council had at that time. And for the public's benefit, proposed LDC update, that's our land development code, that's the zoning code. And an ADU is an accessory dwelling unit. We'll go over that in just a minute. But I wanted to preface this presentation with some information for council. So this is going to be a lot simpler conversation than we had in November with state exemptions and pre-exemptions that happened at the last legislative session, and those that we just learned about may happen at this upcoming legislative session. The staff recommendation is, at the time that this information was presented or prepared and put in the packet, we had, you could move to approve with modification or approve. Honestly, the staff recommendation is going to be to deny this ordinance recommendation based on what we're learning from the state legislation at this time. So we'll go over this pretty quickly. So as I said, an ADU, just going through what we have today, what ADUs are, the the issues presented by state statute, the last legislation session, and this upcoming one, and then what the options are for today. So an accessory dwelling unit is a self-contained living unit on the same lot or parcel as a single-family dwelling of a greater square footage, and it includes its own sleeping and sanitation facilities and may or may not include a kitchen. They can be attached or detached with on the parcel, and they can also be, upstairs or downstairs. But really the meat of this presentation is what we have been preempted by the state regarding. So currently, what is in effect right now, as of last session, is a municipality may not do any of the following. We may not prohibit long-term leasing. This was one of our big conversations at the last meeting, was we were digging into the merits of ADUs and how they could supply workforce housing in the community. But honestly, that conversation is now moot based on this. We also may not require additional parking. That was something that we also discussed at the last meeting. And then even the street improvements that was discussed, that is not something we're allowed to require as well. So we were preempted by the state in a lot of ways. And what the options now are, we could update the LDC today with the language as presented. We are looking at, as community development, we're looking at putting an item in the fiscal 26 budget for a holistic overhaul of the land development code. It's a 20-year plus old code, and there's been a lot of changes at the legislature. There's been a lot of changes in what we've seen in the community and enforcement that we would like to ask council for funds to hire a consultant to look at the entire thing with us and do an overhaul. And this is one of those items that we could look at later after this next legislative session. And then obviously you can always do the nothing option. And that's kind of what we're asking for. Well, that and the second at this time. So right now, what the recommended action would be is to deny ordinance number 2025-1881.
Councilmember Rusing had a comment or question.
Yes. Water is always important. And one of the elements that we included here was submetering, which is within our right to do that according to our water policy, because there's been like ADUs up and down Park Avenue, on Mount Vernon, in the house in the front. There's one meter, and they have no control over the tenant washing their car every day or taking, hour-long showers, because the tenant doesn't get a bill. But with submetering, the tenant would get a bill to encourage water conservation. So I would like to, as part of the motion, move that we require submetering in ADUs. I don't think that's going to conflict with state law.
No, it doesn't conflict with state law. The question, I guess, would be timing. So just now, with this state legislation change, the ADUs are approved for long-term leasing. So that means if they come forward and we know of them, we now have to tell them that that's acceptable. So I guess the question is, do we make this modification to the zoning ordinance now, knowing that we're going to do it probably later in the year, if not in the next several months, to look at it holistically?
I think we
That's the
should
question.
go ahead and do it now so it doesn't get lost in the shuffle. The sooner the better. And just so that new applicants at least will be required to do submetering, because who knows, there could be a big surge in applications for ADUs now.
Yeah.
Mayor Pro Tem Cantelmi.
Yeah, a couple of issues here, but Kathy, I wanted to tell you, you were at the surgery, so you didn't get to hear the legislator Carbone speak to us about that. And I think the reason that the move to deny is, according to what he said, and there were several of us in the room, they're going to be making some modifications to this. And I had personally asked him to do something about the parking issue.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I understand that.
Yeah, but as a footnote, make sure that the Workforce Housing Commission or committee understands the reason, because I know they were all looking forward to this being adopted, but as a possible solution for workforce housing. But I think if we, wait to see what they're going to do. I mean, I know we can go back and modify it, correct? Okay. Yeah, so I'm kind of on the fence. I could do either way. I think we do need to do it. But if they go down there and make some, bigger modifications, we'll just have to amend it in some way. The other question I had is, I'm pretty sure it was me on the street, but what is the correct legal definition of a street? Because this alley that I'm talking about is not a street. It is an alley. It's an unimproved alley, and it isn't used. So could we also consider looking into that once we are able to maybe add some requirements to this?
Yeah, absolutely. We could look into that. What the state's definition of a public street is needs clarification. Yeah, that could be on our list.
This is not a thoroughfare. Nobody goes down this.
Correct.
It was a modification to an easement at one time. But the reason I'm saying that is on a bigger picture in the historic area. It's not a planned area development. It's 100 and something years old. Yeah. Nothing is really consistent. And I think to prevent problems for us in the historic area, I'd like to see something addressing that, because putting these now 3 ADUs in an unimproved alley has not been a good thing for anybody in the neighborhood, let alone the people in the ADUs.
And I'd love for the state to give us a clearer idea of what that means, because literally the statute reads we're not allowed to require improvements to public streets.
Right.
There's a lot of different kinds of public streets.
And I'd love to have some clarity on that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Awesome. And to your point about the workforce housing, to be clear, with the state preempting us, the long-term housing is allowed by the state. So our code saying that it's not allowed, the state overrules us. So the workforce housing should be happy about that initiative.
Then what is the reason to deny it if we have the ability to modify? I mean, could we approve it today and then wait for the modifications? Is that an option?
So absolutely, that's an option for you. However, what's going to change in the legislature is this new section of the law has an area that only applies to populations of 75,000 or greater. And there's 3 requirements that apply only to those size municipalities. Well, what the scuttlebutt is, I guess, is that might be going away and it might apply to all jurisdictions. If that's the case, then this section of code is going to need to be overhauled yet again. So the idea is, if it's not broken and people can still rent long-term, I mean, why do it twice? If we can handle it at one time after this session, really have the opportunity to look at all the sections of the code that apply, then make one recommendation for council and the public to look at holistically.
So in other words, I think Kathy's concern, and I'm not putting words in your mouth here, but is if we hold this up now, are we stopping people that may want to get started?
No, we
Okay.
would be not requiring sub-metering on a guest quarter or ADU.
Right. Okay.
As of January 1st, in Prescott, you can use an ADU as a long-term rental. That's not because we changed our rules. That's because of state law. So that's in effect. That's already in effect. That's been in effect for 2 weeks or 3 weeks. I think the only reason to adopt this would be the sub-metering, because otherwise the state of the law is set for us by the state.
Yeah.
My other thought was, if the state doesn't have a definition for what a public street is, can't we decide on our own to define what a alley is? And that way we would have at least some justification if the legislature continues on with these definitions. Then we could say, well, this is not a public street. It's an alley as per our city's definition of it.
I think that's a question I couldn't answer today. I can tell you that street is defined about 5 different ways throughout the Arizona Revised Statutes. And so we could look into that. I don't think I have an answer today.
Interesting. Okay.
For what it's worth, too, I'm sorry to cut you off, Mayor. Every time we update the code, I have to physically update the code. There's a fee. So if we're doing many different revisions to the code in the same section, we're getting charged every time we do that. So that's just something to keep in mind.
How much of a fee?
I usually just get billed for sections every couple of months because that's generally how we do them. I would have to pull my invoices and see what the exact dollar amount is, but there is a fee for it. Just something to keep in mind.
Do you have a ballpark number?
I
Is it
don't, to be honest.
$5 or $500?
It's definitely not 5.
Is it a million?
I would have to pull. I would have to pull my
$5,000?
invoices. I don't know how much it is. I just wanted to let the council know that so that you're
Well, if it's a
fiscal
nominal
responsibility
fee, I
and
don't think
whatnot.
that's going to impact our decision today.
Okay.
If it's a very significant fee, it might. Councilman Gambogi?
So Chelsea, am I to understand you're recommending that we deny this motion, and then when the dust clears down at the state, we make the modifications at one time?
That's correct. In conjunction with a broader review of the land development code, yes.
So I'm in favor of not piecemealing this and denying the motion so that we can fix it all at one time and not micromanage this.
I have a comment.
Well, the sub-metering issue is not really going to apply to what's happening now or what's happening should the legislature modify it. So having the sub-metering requirement can be done now, and it's unlikely to be impacted by future modifications or amendments that the legislature is considering. Am I correct?
I can't answer that question because the way that the legislature, the way this is written, they're wanting to remove control from the local jurisdictions in the placement of these units. And, one of the requirements or one of the provisions in the bill that was adopted says that if a municipality fails to adopt development regulations, which we have already, but if they fail to do that before January 1st, then ADUs shall be allowed on all lots or parcels zoned for residential use in the municipality without limits. So I don't know, to answer your question. I don't know how far they're going to take it.
So you're thinking that a reference to sub-metering would be considered a limit?
I think a reference to anything that's more stringent than what might be allowed in any other way might throw a red flag. They might put something in there.
City Attorney, what is your opinion of that?
I think I agree with Chelsea in the sense that some of this is unsettled. But I do think private sub-meters are not specifically disallowed as a requirement. And if it was voted for by council, we would follow council's direction on that. But to the extent that there's some things that are unclear and unsettled, that's 100% true. This is sort of unfinished statutory law, which is why they're considering changing it now.
So who's up next? You?
Yeah.
All right, Council. All right, Councilwoman Furworth, go ahead.
Thank you. Okay, so my what I heard from Michael Carbone in the discussion that day with the League of Arizona previous help that we had working for us was that the way this ARS is written, that the 75,000 persons was meant to apply to the entire piece of paper. And they have now heard from multiple municipalities below 75,000 that the way they wrote this was wrong. And so they want to take the 75,000 and bring it up above the line, above A and above B. So the whole thing applies to only 75,000. He understood what our issues were. He understood our small downtown areas. He understood our parking. He heard it from other people, and that they were working to see what they could do to get this done. That when they were selling this to all the legislators, if you look at all the paperwork they were using, the way they sold it to Katie to sign off on it, was this was supposed to be 75,000 above from top to bottom. And so they were looking to see what they could do to not have to wait all the way until they close session and it goes into effect 90 days later, that they were looking to rush something through quickly to make it like they originally intended, not with an A that applies to 75,000 and a B that applies to everybody. So if that is the case, and that's what he said, and he was very, he was looking to see what they could do to move this with lightning speed, to have this fixed before session ends. Like it made it seem to me like it was a month or two, because this was an administrative error on their part, and they're hearing about this from lots of communities. So I say I agree. I came in after hearing that. I moved to deny. Let's not touch anything. Let them see if they can get this fixed. Let's put our consultant on micromanagement of staff down there, and let's see if we can get this through, and then we can come back in a month or 2 or 3 and fix the whole darn thing once. But it made it seem to me like this was such an administrative error that we're not the only community struggling. And I would love to then, it is what it is right now, but if they can fix this in 30 days, then we can add submarine, we can add parking. We would not be beholden to all of this. It'll only be for 75,000 and above. So I say deny.
I'd like to make a comment.
Go ahead, Councilmember Rusing.
Okay, I'd like to make 2 motions. Number 1, to deny.
The motion is out of order. We're not
sorry.
done discussing this yet.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought we were.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor. Joe, I want to just clarify. So if we deny this today, we can come back and they do what they're going to do at the legislature. Then we presumably, because I think the biggest problem I have with the ADUs, and I have no problem with ADUs, is the parking. The parking, that was an unintended consequence for us. Our lots, mostly in the historic area, are 50 by 150. And a few years ago, this back rear setback was reduced to 7 feet to accommodate garages, not ADUs. So if we have the opportunity to go back and, the sub-metering, I think, is something most builders will do anyway. So, but, having it mandated is fine too. But I do think the parking is the biggest impact. And if we can put that rear setback back to where it was to 15, then we can, every one of those ADUs will have parking built in right there. So that's a big concern for me, looking at the way the 3 in my alley function. So if we can we go ahead and, wait, and then would we have the ability to move the rear setback?
Absolutely. You can wait.
Okay.
So we can enact this version or some version in the future. Even if you deny today, we're not stopped in any way.
Okay, but we could potentially go back to the 15-foot setback for a dwelling.
If the law changes based on Councilwoman Fruworth, then we could look at revisiting the parking.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. Thank you.
Councilman Gambo.
If we're going to keep going down rabbit holes, I'm going to bring my beagle to the next council meeting.
As long as it's a certified service dog. Okay, Councilmember Roosing, you wanted to make a motion. Now I think we're ready.
Yes.
My personal opinion is I think we should enact the sub-metering context now.
Yes.
Because there's no guarantee that they're going to be able to get it done promptly. If they're amending a previous statute and it's signed off on, it goes into effect almost immediately, correct, Attorney?
It depends on how they enact it.
Yeah. And if it isn't, then it's going to have to go through that 90-day period.
Yeah, that's correct.
Right. So potentially we could have somebody coming forward asking for a development of an ADU. And if we don't have the requirements for sub-metering, they're going to build it that way. And then we lose that option to be able to monitor their water use on their ADU if it's either connected or non-attached. So that would be my support. We can deny the rest of it, wait until the legislature completes their review, but we ought to be able to put the sub-metering into effect now.
May I make my motion?
Go ahead.
Mr. Mayor, I move to require sub-metering in all ADUs permits.
Well, I know, but we're not adopting the whole thing. We're just adopting that one subsection.
Yes, so it would be moved to adopt with modifications based on the discussion. And we, just for clear,
referencing the specifics of sub-metering.
correct. You're not making any other changes. All you would do in Exhibit A of the ordinance, all that we'd be doing would be adding the private sub-meters are required to promote conservation. That one line, right? Is that your desire?
Well, I'm just concerned if we're going to deny the ordinance, it might be confusing.
No, you're moving to adopt with modification, and the modification would be the only change in this section is the addition of that one sentence.
Okay. All right.
Does that make sense?
Well,
Mayor.
that's your motion, and I'll second that motion.
Mayor, I move to adopt with modifications ordinance number 2025-1881 requiring submetering in all ADUs.
And I'll second that motion. All right, do we have any public comment?
We do not.
No? Okay, we have a motion and a second. Please vote.
Fails 3-4.
Can I make another motion?
Can that motion now be modified to a different motion?
She can make another motion if it up to the mayor.
All right, go ahead.
I'd like to make a motion to require submetering in all ADUs permits.
Is that an appropriate motion, City Attorney?
Point of order. I don't think that's on the agenda.
Yes, it is. It's
I think it's fair on the agenda. I think we don't have a draft for you, so we would take it as direction and come back with language that just approves that.
All right, so we'll have to table that motion to our next meeting.
Thank you.
It shouldn't take any more than now in the next meeting to be able to put that together, right?
Correct.
All right, that concludes our business today, and I'll end this meeting with a reference from Ronald Reagan that I read a couple of years ago, and I think it even means more now with our new administration in the federal government. We must reject the idea that every time a law is broken, society is guilty rather than the lawbreaker. It's time to restore the American precept that each individual is accountable for his own actions. This meeting is adjourned.